for people to love just whoever they like. Today we can laugh as we march to the park, and clause 28's been consigned to the past. Well, if gay liberation means freedom for all, a label is no liberation at all. Bisexual, lesbian, transgender, gay, we're here and we're queer and we're happy to say, sing if you're glad to be gay, sing if you're happy that way.
I think it's so important to let people know where we've come from. Each new generation kind of discovers itself and then has to find its own history. And it's important for those of us who've been around for a while to kind of share that and let people know where we came from. The actual age of consent wasn't legalised until 97 or something like that, when Labour came in. And that only happened thanks to the people who went out with the collecting tins asking for lesbians and gays to support the miners during the miners' strike, which you'd have thought would have been the most kind of weird left field kind of side activity compared to the AIDS struggle that we were facing at the time. And yet actually the fact that we reached out to the mining community and offered them solidarity led to the NUM backing the motion to put gay equality on the agenda at the Labour Party conference. So fantastic result. There's a perception, for instance, that homosexuality was legalised in 1967, whereas actually after 67 there were far, far more arrests and imprisonments of gay men than there were before it, just because the law was so draconian and the police were such bastards.
Tell me, what's changed, do you think, since the early 70s for pop stars and people who are famous?
I think the situation has changed immeasurably since the 70s. I mean, we didn't, in our wildest dreams, imagine that there would be the kind of tolerance generally in society that exists today. The great tenet of GLF, the Gay Liberation Front, was that gay liberation is everyone's liberation. And back then, gay didn't just mean men who like men. That meant the whole gamut of everything non-heterosexual. So on Pride marches, we welcomed people of every conceivable gender. But back then, we had no way of imagining that much tolerance would come along. And GLF always said that you can't have your own freedom in separation from everybody else's. You either live in a free and a fair society or you don't. So women have to have equality. People of different colours have to have equality. You've got to have trades unions recognised and people getting fair pay for fair work. That's all part of the struggle for gay liberation. So I think today's society, for all its drawbacks and growing inequalities that we have to fight against, is a much more tolerant and easygoing society, and much more diverse than anything we could have dared imagine in the 70s.
So as a pop star coming out then, how do you think that affected other LGBT pop stars at the time?
When I sang Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay, the directive was sent out, we don't play Tom Robinson records anymore. But on the other hand, it's the one song after all these years that people remember me for, that there've been other pop hits, but the one that has resonated in other people's lives and the one that has kind of led to lasting affectionate bonds between myself and other people and audiences is the fact that we did actually, with that band, go out on a limb and say, yeah, we're queer, get used to it, So I don't regret it for a moment.
Do you think you coming out encouraged the pop stars who weren't out to come out?
I wouldn't want to make any kind of claim about what Glad to Be Gay achieved in terms of other people coming out as artists. Actually, I was by no means the first out gay man or lesbian artist to be making records. I was only the first one that actually got in the top 20. That's the only difference, so I managed to get my head above the parapet. Loads of people made great gay records long before I came along, and I drew my strength from them. And if people like Mark Armand and Frankie Goes to Hollywood did draw some sort of strength from that, great, but they probably just did it all off their own bat, because they were a new generation of artists and they were making their own going, and society was changing. So it was easier for them, I hope.
Today, for pop stars who are gay, do you think it's still an issue for them to come out?
Today, there is still some level of difficulty, I think particularly for the trans community. I mean, because there's such a program there from the vile tabloid press that we have in this country, not to mention the trolls on Twitter and what have you. But it's a lot easier than what it was. And what's nice is people who are going like, I don't want to define myself. You know, I don't want to go in that box. Michael Stipe or Morrissey. We've all got so much more to us than just L, G, B or T. You know, that we are people, and real liberation will come when we don't need the boxes. Kinsey in the 40s measured the kind of 1 to 10 scale where people were exclusively heterosexual on one end and exclusively homosexual on the other. And most people were kind of varied in between and changed throughout their lifetimes, and, you know, back and forth and back again. So I think it's important to just stay open to your possibilities. We always used to say that to our straight friends who we were trying to seduce back in the days of the 70s. Come, stay open to your possibilities. And I was really so kind of taken aback when, in reverse, the same thing happened to me in the 80s. I went to a gay switchboard benefit and saw the man of my dreams across a crowded room who turned out to be a woman. And some good things happened.
So, do you think that social media has an impact on raising an awareness of LGBT issues?
I love the fact that social media allows us to communicate many to many, so that we don't have to go through central publishers. Back in the 70s, Gay News was our only point of contact. It was one to many. If you didn't get your copy of Gay News, you didn't know what was happening in the community, and you didn't know where your local groups were meeting. So we depended on that old publishing model of the one to the many. Today, because we can communicate many to many, we can create these groups of interests and find people like ourselves. The danger, though, that brings a danger with it, which is that we only ever mix with people who are like ourselves, and we're not exposed to views that would challenge us or to new possibilities. So it's a double-edged sword, social media. It does give us much greater access to each other, but it also tends to close us out from things that would annoy, upset, or maybe change us.
Also, do you think it helps people express transphobic and homophobic views?
We see from the ISIS videos just how evil as much as humanity can be spread through social media. And there's no reason why our enemies can't use it as much as we do. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but at the same time, it does liberate us enormously. So I wouldn't go back to depending on the old press again.
Is the gay press today the same as it was in the 1970s?
When we talk about gay press, really the pioneer was Gay News. And as I say, gay back then meant everybody. It didn't mean just men. It was for the whole community and served the whole community. And the great thing it did was normalise our experience as people, made us ordinary citizens. When Bob Workman used to go out with his roving camera around the clubs of Britain and take candid snaps, it wasn't porn, it was normalising people and seeing the faces of people living openly and happily. And that was the message then. And today, I think the interests are, shall we say, a little more specialised.
Do you think the younger LGBT community could do with reflecting on where we've come from to where we are today?
The great thing about LGBT History Month, and this festival in particular, is it's a chance for us to lay out there what it was like in those distant days that have now vanished. I don't think for us to boast about anything that we did back then. Not all of it was entirely honourable or praiseworthy. You know, we did a lot of things, some of it good, some of it bad. But what we faced is something that people don't know. They don't know what the legal situation was like, what the police oppression was like. They don't know what the homophobia in the newspapers was like. They have no idea what the AIDS crisis was like, how we had all those fantastic, wonderful lovers and friends who just became old men overnight and died. And, you know, when I see today websites advertising barebacking as a big, great, sexy thing, and I see these young men throwing their lives away like that on the basis that the NHS will always be there with retroviral drugs to save their lives again in the future. Our generation didn't have that fucking luxury. And I just hope we can educate. We have to tell our stories. We have to tell our stories, not over how great we were, but over what we faced and what we could face again. We are at the top of the wheel. That wheel turns inevitably over 50-year cycles. Who knows where we'll be 50 years from now? We've got to always watch for our rights being eroded, for people making little inroads, little attacks, and defend liberty. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
One more time.